Welcome to another Forensic Happy Hour. Again, kind of a day early, but it's not called like the Friday Happy Hour because every day could be Happy Hour. So, if you didn't see, kind of a little tweet, Thirsty Thursday is what I called it, but I probably just stole that from, some pub around here. So excellent. So we have another great show. I'm excited to make questions up on the fly. Andrew Rathbun is going to be on here. I'm sure that you guys are very familiar, especially if you tool around on Discord, as well as obviously with about DFIR. So I think it's going to be a great conversation. Well, I know it's going to be a great conversation because beer is involved in this. So enjoy. Okay, here we are. And again, with the cheers. So fantastic. We talked about
Cheers.
our beers before. All right, so Andrew, I appreciate first you coming on here and you know, I guess answering some of my questions that, as I explained to you, I just make them up. But obviously, we need to start this off by you talking about yourself because this show is all about you. So let everyone know. On the really kind of on the forensic side of it, when you're kind of the evolution of starting into it, what type of it, if you started, hey, actually I went to school to become a psychologist, that's great, and then went into it. But so kind of let everyone know really who you are and what you're doing now.
So I went to school to become a cop. Actually, my degrees are in criminal justice and sociology, and I went to the police academy in 2011. I became a cop in 2012 at the Michigan State University Police Department. So I was a campus police officer for 7 years. My first 4 years I was on the road, and then the last three I was a detective. During those 4 years on the road, I became kind of the nerdy guy. I was like the IT guy on night shift, working 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And so that I think word just traveled, throughout the department after a while, and they said, "Hey, you're going to be a digital forensics detective." So I'm like, "All right, Roger that." So I became a digital forensics detective in 2016, and then I was there for 3 years doing that. So got a lot of experience with homicides, child exploitation, um, sextortions, just a lot of different cases. So it was a really good experience. And
Mm-hmm.
then after that, I went to the feds for a year, HHS OIG, where I was a forensic computer examiner. Um, and that was mostly Medicare and Medicaid fraud. So that was a good experience. And then now I'm at Kroll, where I'm a senior associate, and I'm doing basically incident response.
So in the law enforcement world, it's quite interesting. A lot of people don't understand. You have to push a patrol car around for a while, right, before you get out.
Right.
And so obviously, I had to do that same thing in on the law enforcement side of it. And so, do you think that? I mean, that did it prepare you to say, obviously get into the forensic stuff, or it prepared you to say, man, I'm glad I'm not doing that and I'm getting into the forensic? Or did you really start it and because you had to push the patrol car around, you still you wanted to get into kind of the nerdy stuff as you described?
I don't think I knew I wanted to get into the nerdy stuff until because I was basically told I'm going into that position, and it actually kind of bummed me out initially. But once I got into it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I was supposed to do. So hopefully that kind of answers your question.
Yeah.
I've always been kind of a nerd. I've always, been on the internet, as young as I possibly could be. I was on a computer, sitting on the computer all day. I'm sure my mom appreciated it. But I just always loved technology and, mixing law enforcement and technology through digital forensics. I really loved it.
So in the law enforcement side of it, what I guess the case is, was it computers, laptops, type of stuff, media cards, phones? I mean, what were you really doing at that time during your time as law enforcement?
Yes, all the above.
All the above.
Yep.
All the
It
above.
was
That's an
what
easy question.
it was whatever came in, whatever the case was. We serviced a lot of outside agencies that didn't have their own digital forensics units. So, I got to experience, crimes outside of what typically occurs on a campus. So that's where your homicides come in. That's where, a lot of the more severe crimes So it was a really good experience to investigate those different, because there's different elements to every crime, obviously, as we know, as we both know. So
Hmm.
it's just
Hmm.
interesting to see how that translates onto the device, whether you're looking at a computer, cell phone, SD card, and whatever else may come your way.
So you transition into, say, the private sector and the type of work that you do now. Obviously, different cases. I'm sure of it, or different types of work. But do you think that your law enforcement prepared you for the cases that you're doing, or do you think the law enforcement or the training that you had in law enforcement, as in any of the classes that you've had, prepared you for that? Does that make sense? So, you know, was your experience in law enforcement that helped you now, or more or less say maybe the training that you were involved in?
I would say yes and no, and I say that only because I don't do cell phones really anymore, and I had a lot of cell phone training obviously while I was in law enforcement. But I don't get to apply that training anymore. But the cases that I had, the things I looked through, yeah, it very very much helped me, and I'm able to build off of that. So I started at Kroll back in March, and I've grown a lot since then. But I've
Hmm.
built off where I left off in law enforcement. And without that law enforcement experience, like I don't know how I would be able to do what I do at Kroll today.
Hmm. Hmm. And so I guess, is it, would you say that the availability of training, I guess, is training more available to you now on the private side than it was in law enforcement? As in, a couple of things, right? Funds, and or the number or the different types of training that you can attend.
So I would say I was actually pretty blessed in that regard from the law enforcement side. We had quite a big budget set aside for the digital forensic and cybercrime unit. So I was able to go to a lot of training, probably more so than the average detective or law enforcement forensic examiner. So I can't, my answer is probably not going to mirror what most people are going to say. I did get a lot of training. I'm very, very thankful for that. Um, so I think it was actually pretty similar. I get a lot of training in the private sector. I got a lot of training in law enforcement. Um, so yeah, I was just
So
very lucky in law enforcement.
so for those people that are that are watching, what would you say that's something that obviously assists you now currently in your career, as a training, or a piece of what do you think is most important for them in starting out their career, or they're in their career right now? What do you think is important to them on the digital forensics side of it, or incident response side of it, that you might be working on?
What that I'm working on, or what they can do for
Yeah,
themselves.
what they can do for themselves, that
Okay.
from your experience in your current, obviously in your current job, what can they do to, one, better themselves, or even get into this? What are those things that they need to focus on?
I really think networking is just really it's everything.
Hmm.
Just hanging out in places where you can passively be around people where there's a lot. Obviously, everyone knows I'm part of Discord, right? So
We
I'm
haven't
coming
got
at
to
it from
that
this.
question yet. You're jumping ahead of that. No, it's
I'm sorry.
good.
So just trying to be trying to create as many passive resources for yourself to where you will trip over opportunities, trip over knowledge as you can, whether that's through RSS feeds, hanging out in Slack channels, Discord channels, um, monitoring, hashtag DFIR, digital forensics on Twitter. Anything you can do to automate that or make it as passive as possible so you do the least amount of work while getting the most amount of benefit. I think that's where everyone can start and probably improve based upon what they're already doing.
So it's interesting. Obviously, I talked to Phil Moore. I was frozen at that time, but he was not. But the
Right.
thing is, obviously, talking with RSS and those different types. If you look at it, and I'm sure that he would agree with me. I'm not. Well, I am speaking for him. But is that, I remember when I'm training or going through training and just learning how to do some stuff. It was, and it still is, and I see it as sometimes information through a fire hose. And to be quite
Yes.
honest with you, there's a lot of stuff out there, and Phil said the same thing, is that there's so much stuff that has to go through and parse through this, and the consuming all this information is is still through a fire hose. It might be just digital side of it. So I guess what type of recommendations might you have for someone, because no one learns. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I know I don't learn very well by having 40 things shoved at you at one time. So how can they go and they can take that fire hose down and maybe selectively identify the things that might be important to them? I mean, do you have any suggestions on that?
Well, first of all, if you're not subscribed to This Week in Forensics, I highly recommend whoever is watching this, whoever's listening, you need to do that. Spend a few minutes every Sunday and look at the different. They got it. What Phil and Ladrina do is they put it in different categories. So, if you're not doing malware, don't look at the malware analysis section. If you're not doing an incident response, don't do the incident response section. Simple as that. So, I'll go back to whatever you can do passively. That arrives in your inbox every Sunday if you're Eastern time, and just read that. Another thing, Slack, Discord channels, whatever instant messaging. There's on Discord. I'll speak for Discord. There's different channels. If you're doing just computer forensics, there's a computer forensics channel. If you're doing just mobile devices, there's an extractions decoding channel. Hang out in those areas where other people are doing the same things that you're doing, where smarter people than you are hanging out. Listen to what they're saying, read what they're saying, whatever links they're posting, go look at those. You will learn from them.
So,
That's
so not to date myself, but every time, because I mean, I use Discord a lot. I use Slack. I mean, there's a lot of different things that I utilize, whether it be for work or obviously for information sharing. But it's like BBS time. So it is like back in the day. I'm telling you what, the bulletin board service that was completely electronic.
mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think people dig that. It kind of gets away from, again, my opinion only is that share pictures, Instagram, where you have all of this. This is just kind of get to the meat of it, right? This is a conversation that you're having, and someone can go to that channel and they identify it again to maybe take that fire hose, or they could even go in and have a communication with the other people in the community for that. So are you familiar with BBS stuff? Exactly, you're young.
BBS.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm older than I look. I promise.
Yes. So again, so tell me, really, because I agree with you, and I kind of wanted, I was alluding to that fact of, especially this week in forensic, of how you're able to go and dive in, because I'm not a malware guy. I love kind of reading on that stuff. I do mobile stuff, cloud type of stuff, and you can dial in directly to that so that you're not. But it's funny because on the front side of that, there's probably thousands and thousands of articles, from what I understand, as that get funneled into these types of feeds. So again, I think that's extremely important. So let's talk about Discord, because I mean, this is, especially on the forensic side of it. To be honest with you, I'm not, just because you're the guest on here, but I think that it has been tremendous, for on the community side of it. Tremendous. It's now being emulated by some companies as a good place to go and have communicate. And so I'm a little bit torn about that. Obviously, companies doing that, taking away from and now diluting it. But that's, again, my personal opinion. So talk about really this channel, and what can people do, and really learn and, just explain it.
So the Discord server, I'll start with the history a little bit. It started back in March of 2018. It was a handful of us. I think 3 of us initially were moderators. And right before this call, actually, I went and looked up some of the milestones, the membership milestones. So it's grown a lot. Obviously, we're at probably, I think it was 5,600 members, something like that. We hit 1,000 members in February of 2019, then October later that year, 2,000. March of 2020, we hit 3,000, and then May of this year, we hit 4,000. I don't think I even recorded the 5,000 because thanks to the SANS Virtual Summit, and the Magna Virtual Summit,
Right.
it just went skyrocket really quick. So basically, it started out as a mobile forensics IRC channel. That's what it was before Discord. And the reason why it started is because I got sick of uploading images to Imgur and then pasting the link into IRC, because we all know IRC is a very basic,
Right.
communication platform. So and I had just joined Discord actually recently before that when I'm telling these guys, hey, let's go to something else where we can actually like upload a picture, you know? So that's where Discord came about, and that's where this mobile forensics Discord was created. Over time, we were seeing some of the people that were joining private sector, a lot of IR people were like, okay, maybe we should rebrand this to just digital forensics Discord server. So that's where we've been for probably the last year and a half. I'm not exactly sure on the date of that, but there's probably 20, 25 some channels all covering, it's all together. It's a massive fire hose, but it's chopped up in all these different channels to where if you only care about password cracking and drones and DVR forensics, it's those three channels are right there. I just pointed at them on my left monitor. So if
Right.
that's all you want to, monitor, mute all the other stuff and just pay attention to those. Same thing with all the other 20, 25 channels. And a lot of, to kind of answer a previous question too, hang around in the Discord server because there's a lot of passive resources there. This forensic happy hour is pushed every single time, that an episode goes live. Same with the forensic lunch. A few of the Cellbrite ones, a few of the Magnet ones about DFIR. Every single time a post goes on there, it goes there. 13 cubed. We got Phil's This Week in Forensics. So just hanging out in one location, you will have a whole bunch of information basically just force fed to you. And it's just up to you to either mark it as read or actually read it.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah, I think that's important to
it,
know. I mean, people sometimes people take. I mean, because I'll fully admit I stalk. Yeah, you always got to stalk around, and you're kind of looking and doing all
yeah.
these great things, right? So people, sometimes people think that you have to actively participate. Now, granted, that's the best thing to do, obviously, on that if you have
Sure.
that information. But you can still be there and learn a ton of information by just reading. I mean, there's some great stuff that goes through there, information or pointing to other information that you can go to and then understand because I'm telling you right now, there are a lot of smart people out there, and I always say if you can learn one thing every day, which typically it's like 20 things for me, but if you can learn one thing, I mean, it's great, right? So I think that
Absolutely.
is something that has grown because with the DFR with the summit, right? Is that because there was like an award, right? Right. So with that being said, they had 20,000 people virtually on this when I think typically what do they maybe have 1,000, I think
Hmm.
maybe around there 600, and there was 20,000 people. And so
That's amazing.
just taking that and now going in and looking at the reach, that you have and the information from all over the world. So, I mean, how many countries do you think that are, coming on to the Discord server?
It's a great question. I actually have an answer right at the ready for that.
Damn,
Last time I
gosh,
checked,
I
I
can't
believe it
stump you.
was no. So we have different roles that we assign people. Every role has the exact same access. It's more just for labeling, right?
Mhm.
So that's important for law enforcement because different countries have different laws, naturally, right? Um, so we have law enforcement USA, law enforcement Poland, whatever. We have last I checked was 44 of those. So
Okay.
44 different law enforcement, and there's some that I've never heard of, like Moldova. I don't even know where that is. Seychelles. I don't even know how to say it.
Right.
So like it's just amazing. I've gotten kind of a geography lesson, as people have joined and they post in the role assignment channel and they say, "Hey, I'm law enforcement for insert country I've never heard of before here."
Right.
Oh, where is that? I'm
Right.
curious.
Yeah.
So pretty amazing. And to kind of caveat off of that story, there's another one because before we had this kind of automated system of whenever someone joins, they need to post, what just a little bit about who they are so we can assign a role to them. It was someone who said they're from Alaska. So they're a cop in Alaska. And they said, hey, man, this channel is, or this server is amazing because my nearest forensic examiner is 3 hours to the north of me. Like, and I'm the only one. So if I have an issue, I'm either asking myself or I'm Googling it. So, at the time there's maybe 2,000 people in the server. They're like, hey, I can just ask a question here, and it's like all these people are in my office basically.
Mhm.
There's always someone to help, and that's always stuck with me. That's what this server is all about. It's entirely community driven. When we were, when we were lucky enough to win that award, it wasn't me winning it. It wasn't the moderators winning it. It was the community winning it because this server is absolutely nothing without the community, without that one cop in Alaska, without, whoever's in Moldova, the ones in Singapore, everyone drives the server. So kind of gotten a caveat there, but
Yeah, and you
I
know,
just
and I
want
I
to
think
make
that
sure that's set.
yeah, and I think that's extremely important, and just in the conversations that I've had over the last, it's been yeah, it seems like forever, right? That we're kind of hanging out, but the thing, the common theme, if you actually, and for people watch these, is that it comes down to really the information, the community side of it, and it seems as though, I mean, at least to me, that there's more, right? It's that those people, because either you don't have the conference, or you don't have, you're not able to go in and have a conversation with someone in the office, like you said, that these
Right.
types of, these types of portals, or this access that people have, is unbelievable. I mean, it's very, very important. So what happens when it goes back, right? What happens then? Hey, we're all ready to go back to work, or to these conferences, or to be in the office and be able to ask a question. Do you think that this will die off? As in having conversations, or do you see it as, people are like, you know what? I got so much information from XYZ, on all of these different channels, that actually I don't want to ever talk to anybody in person.
Obviously, I can't predict the future, but I don't think the server's going anywhere anytime soon. I think if anything, maybe certain people are active for a few months and then they'll drop off. I know within law enforcement, as you know, assignments get changed all the time, right? Um, there's a department in my home state where I know they'll throw someone in the digital forensic unit, and then 3 months later they'll throw them out. You and I both know how much can you learn in 3 months,
Right.
So um, people come and go. There are some people I see that post for the first time in like a year and a half. Um, I don't think it's going anywhere. I think just the people will change. As more people join, as maybe people retire. Obviously, when I retire, I don't know if I'll be hanging out,
Right.
on
Right.
Discord, answering questions and asking questions. But I don't. I think it's here to stay, and hopefully I don't have to eat my words on that. But
No.
I'm very proud of what it's become, and I'm very proud of the community, the people who participate in it daily, that keep it a worthwhile resource for people to, hey, dude, you should join this.
Yeah.
This is a good resource,
Yeah, and I honestly think that it will stay, and I think it'll become bigger, simply because, it's one of those things that a lot of people, and I think I'm trying to think if it was Eric Zimmerman I was talking about. No, anyway, had the conversation of the summit, and it might have been Lee Whitfield. So we had a conversation. It was like, okay, so many people came to the summit virtually. It's crazy.
hmm
Are they only going to do it virtually? Is are the things that happen? Well, no, it's actually Brian Brandt. I'm sorry, Brian, if you're watching this, it was you. Is that was the conversation was okay? Are we not going to have any people there? Because some of us like to go and sit and hang out and talk and do those types of things. But there's a
Sure.
lot of people that don't, right? There's a lot of people that are in the
Right.
back and they're never going to ask a question, even that they're there. But now they can do it virtually, semi-anonymously, right?
Yeah.
And ask really good questions. You wish they asked them all the time. So I honestly think that obviously we're still going to have it, but I think there's going to be a virtual component to it that allows people, and quite honestly, I think it's going to be even bigger, and
Yeah.
with the access to it, because people say that, wow, we can actually do this, right? We can actually go in and transmit this across to the rest of the world,
Mhm.
record all of these. They can be asking questions from, you know, um, Moldova. Was that what that this? I've never heard that
Yeah.
either. They can ask questions while you're there, right? They don't have to be there. They don't have to pay for necessarily the travel that you have there. So again, I really think that, I always talk about silver lining in my things, but I really think that it is. Well, the community sharing, I think it's only going to grow, just because
Yeah.
now there's really a different medium, whether
Yep.
it be attending it virtually, being able to go to these different types of, a listserv, or being on to, Discord, or these other items. I mean, what do you think?
I fully agree. And, I can't tell you how many blogs have been started from Discord, just from people hanging out on Discord and other people saying, "Hey, you should start a blog,"
Yeah.
and then people do. So I absolutely think this is going to continue. I hope it continues, even if there is a physical, in-person element. I hope somehow those of us who can't actually, go there, I hope there is still some sort of virtual element via Discord or Slack or whatever it is. I
And I'll,
hope so.
yeah, and
So,
I'll
and
always
I'm
be the one.
very curious.
Yeah, and
I'm
I'll always
very
be the one.
curious to see. Yep.
Yeah, to make sure that I'll have the virtual bar set up, so then we'll just do. It'll be like a Zoom thing. We'll just all just hang out. If you can't be there, we'll just kind of do the virtual bar. But so you brought something up, about DFIR, that type of stuff. I mean, talk a little bit about that. I know there's it's been around a while, right? So a lot of
Yeah.
communication, a lot of conversation, and I know that with the contributing to that. So let people know about that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. The history behind that is that's actually Devin Ackerman's site. I believe he started in 2016 or 17, something like that. Um, so he actually reached out to me actually a year ago, I think like yesterday or tomorrow. A year ago tomorrow is when he reached out to me and said, "Hey, let me back up real quick. We actually had a Google Drive, a shared Google Drive for the Digital Forensics Discord server where, hey, if you have a guide that you typed up, for at the time Samsung Galaxy S6 or, whatever devices you got into, we will host it centrally here."
Mhm.
So he actually reached out to me and he said, "Hey, instead of this Google Drive, do you want to just host the content about DFIR?" So I'm like, go back to the mods, talk about it. Yep,
Yeah.
we all agreed. And so that's just kind of where it all began. And I started contributing a year ago tomorrow.
Mhm.
So um, about DFIR is kind of a site that if he hadn't created it, like I would have loved to do it myself. So I love aggregating content in a nice, pretty package for people to consume easily. Like 25 years ago, something like that, back when GeoCities was a thing, if you remember that, I used to make these awful, awful websites that would host downloads to programs that I liked, kind of like your Major Geeks from back in the day, or
Right.
CNET,
Right.
download.com,
Exactly. Yeah.
stuff like that. I used to like do my own. So like I feel like, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, I feel like something like that was always kind of in my blood, and about DFIR has allowed me to really express that in the field that I'm working in right
Hmm.
now. So
Hmm.
I really enjoy it. Um, I only have so much free time. I have a young child at home, so I'm trying to be the best father that I can, and sometimes that means some of the things I'd really like to do to the site, maybe happens 6 months later than I would really like it to happen.
Right.
But, I do the best that I can do. And it's also kind of an outlet to where I can still help law enforcement. Because, I have like some search warrant and preservation letter templates
Hmm.
on there. I really liked doing that stuff when I was a cop, and I feel like I could, hopefully it helps that one cop in Alaska, right? Who
Right.
doesn't have anyone near him within 3 hours.
Right.
If it helps one person one time, it was worth doing.
Right.
That's kind of, or if it puts one pedophile in prison,
Hmm.
worth
Hmm.
doing.
Right.
All you need is one. That's it.
So the question I always get, I mean, still to this day, yeah, I tip, I still go out and hang out with some of the guys, kind of in the law enforcement side of it, right? And so they always ask me, they're like, "Hey, man, do you miss it? Do you miss law enforcement?" I mean, what's your answer to that? And then I'll tell you mine.
I miss the clowns. I don't miss the circus.
Oh, that what? That's almost exactly what I say typically. So it
Yep.
was one of those. The patrol side of it, I really, really enjoyed the patrol side of it. It was kind of a cool thing. Chasing back. It was just, it was
It's
one of
fun.
those.
It's
It's fun, right?
objectively fun.
It is, and
Yeah.
I think it is. You get that, the whole adrenaline is fun. It's really good. You really think that you're helping out. I mean, you're going to all these different types of calls, and when you're leaving, you don't know if you put a band-aid on it, but a lot of times you're like, man, you know what? I'm kind of making the world a little safer in my small world, right? That you might
Yes.
have.
Yep.
Then you move into CID and you start doing all of the CP cases and all these other types of cases on the computer side of it, and you kind of see, you're like, wow. So that's why I explained to them. I'm like, man, yeah, I'd love patrol. It's great. If I would have left during that time, yeah, I would have really missed it. But to be honest with you, I don't. Simply because obviously doing it with the CID side of it, um, and then just concentrating on that. I think it comes down to the camaraderie, those types of team type of stuff, and that's what I try to do too is give
Absolutely.
back as much as I can to on the law
Yep.
enforcement side of it because honestly they don't have the budgets that
Yep.
they might need. So anything that they can do, especially on the training side of it, I try to assist on that. So
Absolutely.
do you still run into any of the guys that you had worked with?
I still keep in contact with the guys that I work with. Yeah, I don't have any, business involvement, so to speak, but I try to do what I can through about DFIR to hopefully help,
Right.
that one law enforcement detective that's stranded and doesn't have, is hopefully Googling for something and hopefully hits, something that we have on that site. That's what I'm hoping for.
So I always try to make people listen until the end, but we're not quite to the end, I don't think. But I want them to listen because what I mean, I talk about artifacts. Something that really, and it's funny because I always go into the artifacts and everyone's like, well, I mean, there's so many different ones, but think, what is something that you can tell? I mean, someone maybe brand new into this, either doing computer forensics, instant response,
Yeah.
mobile devices, whatever. What is something that you think is extremely important that either the start of the investigation, middle investigation, end of the investigation, whatever it is that they need to make sure that not necessarily concentrating on it, but has to be included in some way to maybe drive them into the truth.
Yeah, so I'll go back on my own experience and like kind of my own regrets, my own hindsight. When I was dealing with like we'll just go with child exploitation, right? Because there's nothing worse.
Right.
Um, so a lot of my reports would reflect, hey, these images existed, and that's really all I knew at the time. Now
Mhm.
knowing what I know now, I could prove, okay, did they open this file? Did they open this video? I wish I could go back in time, knowing what I know now, and be able to paint a better picture. Hey, not only did they possess it, but hey, this is how they downloaded it. This peer-to-peer program is downloaded on this date, this time. It was installed on this date, this time. Here's where the files were stored. They opened it on this day with this link file.
Mhm.
Um, all these other artifacts, to prove evidence of execution. I just didn't know that at that
Right.
time.
So
Luckily for those cases, we just had so much, child exploitation material that I guess it really didn't matter, so to speak. But I wish I could go back in time and paint a more vivid picture of, just their history. What they do, or what they
quite
did on that
yeah, quite
device.
honestly, I mean, so let's do this. So the open source tools that are out there that I know that you're familiar with as well, is that something that you're like, I wish I would have had some of these? Especially when we start talking about, a file access. I mean, open those types. I mean,
Mhm.
what would you? Were you saying, hey, yeah, I wish I had this at that time?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, I wish I had those tools back then, but those artifacts still existed at the time. And I think the
Exactly.
main battle is just knowing those artifacts. And it doesn't matter what tool you're using,
Yeah.
you just need to know those artifacts exist. And whatever tool you're using will probably parse out, they should parse out those artifacts. And
Right.
then you should know what each of those mean.
Mhm.
And I remember particularly, if they have them categorized by all these different artifacts, well, I don't really know what this means. I don't know what that means. So I never really looked at them. I just went,
Right.
click pictures and, I mean, that's it is what it is,
Yeah.
hey, they had this many thousands of pictures.
Do you think a lot of
I
investigations in law enforcement still are driven by imagery? I mean, especially CP cases or those that are just like, oh, picture done. I mean, or do you think that people are or investigators now or more tuned to understanding that granular type of artifact or some of the metadata that's associated to that, or are we simply still in that place of, yeah, okay, this is a picture, this is a file, that's all I need?
I would like to think as time goes on, the very base understanding evolves over time, and you always have to cater towards the lowest common denominator because you're only as strong as your weakest link. So there's always work to be done if you're thinking about it from that perspective. The I guess for lack of a better term, the button pusher who doesn't know at all what is going on. We need to assume that everyone's like that and make sure that they understand what the tool is doing, the artifacts that are put in front of their face, what it means, how they can further enhance their reports to then have a higher chance of prosecution. Because I know in some areas, you can do all the right things, but sometimes the prosecutor doesn't want to, take that case on for whatever reason. So the better picture you can paint, maybe that might
Yeah,
convince
and that's
convince
another
them
thing.
otherwise.
Yeah, that's another thing I've had conversations about is, you might have the training, you're the examiner, investigator, you have that training, you understand it. How important is it to actually go and explain it to, and we're not just talking about prosecutors, but how, in the civil side of it or a corporation, how important is it to explain to the person of you know, whether it be a prosecutor, whether it be a manager who's going to go and bring this in front of the board, or how important is that, right? You might understand it, but they might say, yeah, it's not important. No, 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 but
Right.
understand this is why. What do you think about that?
It's extremely important because people's jobs can be on the lines, their livelihoods, the way they put food on the table, the way they provide for the family, the roof over their heads, that could be on the line. So you need to be as accurate as possible, present the findings, let the findings speak for themselves rather than, okay, these are the findings, but, we got to fill in the gaps here because that's probably what it is. No, you let the findings, you let the facts speak for themselves. I think that's really the only the right way to go about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you don't have the facts, just say I don't have the facts to support anything beyond what I can support based on the facts that I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, I agree with you. That's extremely important, right? Because you might have just a dialed in examination or investigation that you really have things outlined, and but then the person who's actually reviewing it and presenting that information, is who has to go and try to get this, or the decision maker on it just might not get
Yep.
it, right? Where are the pictures?
Yep.
Where what's this? And trying to explain to them really the underlying things, the things that maybe a tool doesn't get, but you're able to go in and parse in and grab some of that information. I think that is,
Mhm.
very, very important. So very good. So the thing is, I've been waiting to ask. I mean, this is probably something, and I kind of did talk to you a little bit about it, but I wish I wouldn't have because it would have been even better. So, so honestly, I mean, your handle on Twitter is one of my favorites. I mean, I just say it all the time. So, if anybody doesn't know, it's Buns of Wrath 12, right? So they can make sure that you
Yep.
get that. So I need you to explain to me and everyone else because honestly, it's fantastic.
I appreciate that. Well, obviously, it's a play on my last name, right? So I'll just start from the beginning. So Buns, while I was in law enforcement, that's all I was called. Like no one called me Andrew, no one called me by my last name. That was all people called me.
Yep.
And there's a reason for that. So when I was in the United States Marine Corps from 2000, I enlisted in 2004 and I got out in 2012. So I went to Iraq in 2006, 2007, Fallujah, Iraq. My team leader at the time, he's like, "Hey, Rathbun, I don't want to say your name in a firefight. It's just too much of a mouthful. So I'm going to call you Buns, and that's your name." And I was, for those in the military, I was an E2, so I was a private first class. Like, I was just like, "Roger that, Corporal."
Throw
Like
it on my
I
helmet.
don't have a say. I don't have a say in the I don't have a say in the matter. So Buns was created in Fallujah, Iraq, because he did not want to say my full name if we had drawn fire. So that started in late 2006. So that was kind of my nickname all throughout up until really I left law enforcement. No one's called me Buns in the last year and a half or so. It's been weird. People call me Andrew. I'm almost
Wait,
not
what?
used to that, but yeah, and I'm okay. I'm okay with that. But it's a cool nickname. So that's where Buns comes from, and then just of Wrath. Like I just did I just added the W, just why not, right? And then 12, that's actually when I started playing like organized hockey.
Aha.
So
Very
that was my
good.
number. So that's really, I mean, that's it. That's the story.
No, that's fantastic. That is because it's uh, I stalk, looking at there's actually, Buns of Wrath. If you kind of look, the interesting part about that is there is um, a person who is writes code is Buns of Wrath too. So I mean, I'm like going, hey,
Well,
it's like the best ever. So
nice.
I'm like,
Nice. Did not
yeah,
know that.
Fantastic. No, exactly. So
Well, that's
no,
awesome.
I had to because every time I mean I see I'm like that's fantastic. It is probably the best one that I've seen ever on that. So what I want to do before we go too is I mean how can people because again community is super important and there's a lot of people that maybe don't have training budgets but they can get information, they can interact with people that are in the industry, they can ask questions, they can find solutions. So where can people go to get some of this information? How do they get onto the Discord server? How can they subscribe, to any of the, say, the About DFIR or any other places that you might recommend?
So if you just Google digital forensics Discord, I've done enough work and Google has done enough indexing to
Mm-hmm.
where like your top 6 results are going to result in some sort of invite to that site
Mm-hmm.
or to that server. So just Google digital forensics Discord or send a blank email to digitalforensicsdiscord@gmail.com. There's a vacation message that sends automatically the invite link, and it should tell you everything you need to know. Once you join, here's the big thing. Once you join, you need to tell me a little bit about yourself. Hey, I work in the private sector. Hey, I'm Law Enforcement Canada. Hey, I'm a student. Tell me something about yourself so me or one of my mods can say, hey, can assign you to a role, and then you can have access to the rest of the server. So if you join and you're only seeing 3 channels, then you don't have full access. You're missing 95% of it. So now, in terms of other passive resources, if you go on About DFIR and you search for RSS, I actually put together an RSS starter pack, which has pretty much everyone you would need to follow in the industry, the major vendors, and all of it is pushed into one RSS feed that you can import into Feedly or whatever other RSS feed readers are out there. I don't even know. I just use Feedly, and I have a guide step by step on how to import that so that can automatically come to your phone with the Feedly app, and it's just in one centralized place. You have everything you need to know about digital forensics. The other thing would be probably follow the hashtag DFIR on Twitter. Um, Really, though, if you just hang out on Discord, that takes care of a lot of it because I've automated a lot of that stuff to where just existing there and actually actively checking it, there's just going to be a lot of things thrown at you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have any issues, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn, Twitter, Discord. I always joke if we had like addresses on the internet, mine would be in the Discord server. So you can always find me there.
Right.
That's reliably where you can always find me because I'm the administrator. I want to make sure everything's going smoothly. So you can always find me on there.
No, it's
Just
great.
be
It is. It is.
just be understanding of time zones. That's the only
Exactly.
thing because
Yeah,
I know I've
that's exactly right. Yeah. So now, you need to make sure that you have all of the moderators in every one of these, the 42 different countries that you can do.
we're
Yeah.
working on it. We're
Yeah,
working on
right.
it.
No, it's fantastic. No, it's a great resource. It is fantastic. And I appreciate all that you have done. And thank you very much.
I'm out. A little bit left.
Well, I just
Drop.
finished. I just finished Lonesome Larry for you.
Awesome.
So awesome. Thank you so much again for this. And again, make sure keep up the good work, and we'll make sure to get you on again because
Appreciate it.
it's always fun to drink with someone instead of by
Absolutely. Thank you
myself.
very much for the
Awesome.
opportunity. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. See you next time. Okay. Again, another Forensic Happy Hour with a. Well, I'm just going to call him Buns now. So it is. He doesn't like Andrew. So if you guys do watch this, please call him Buns anytime you see him. And hey, make sure. I think that he's been a little modest with the Discord server. It is always active. There are some great, great people on there. Again, the best form of flattery is when people go in and copy. And so, again, make sure that you're on that. Make sure that you're trying out getting some of these resources on there as well. Take advantage. He completely, I was going to call him Andrew, but Buns has given you guys some great information for you guys can start. You don't have to go necessarily to training. Start out this way. So, again, next week we will be back, and it's supposed to be on Friday, but you never know. I might get thirsty and have it on Thursday. So thanks, everyone, and enjoy. See you next time.